we ready to go, Wendy? Okay. Well, I would like to call this meeting of the Santee Ynez Community Service District to order September 18th, 2019 at 5:30. Yay, perfect. 5:30 p.m. So, can we do a roll call, Wendy?
Director Beard?
Here.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director DeAndre?
Here.
Director Muller?
Here.
Thank you. Okay, and can we stand and Frank, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're moving on to item 4, which is director comments. This is an opportunity for the different directors to comment on any meetings that they've attended on behalf of the district or anything that they choose to share that may relate to the district. No? My only thing is we had a wonderful meeting this afternoon with Solvang with our wastewater treatment standing committee. And Jeff and I had a little argument. I think we had a first down. He thinks we had a base hit. But it was a very good meeting, and so we can get to that in committee reports. But that's all I have to report as far as meetings. Now we will move on to public comments. This is an opportunity for people in the public to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. So if you're here to speak on Horizon Drive, wait until we get to that agenda item. But is there anyone here who has anything that they would like to say that is not on this agenda for this evening? Looks good, I guess. Okay. Well, that is Arrival with some fanfare. I like the music in the background. Great entrance. Okay, so now we will move on to the consent agenda. This is where the board approves items that are non-controversial. So if the directors have had an opportunity to review the minutes and the treasurer's dashboard. We have the regular meeting minutes of August 21st, and we also have our special meeting of August 30th. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything they need to change on the minutes of either meeting? How about questions? Frank, did you have something?
No, I was just going to say I'll make the motion to accept the meeting minutes as written.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that.
Minutes or the consent agenda?
With the whole consent agenda.
Do you have a second?
Oh, Frank made the motion.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
I'll
for-
second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Director Muller and a second by Director Beard to approve the consent agenda as presented. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Beard?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Muller?
Aye.
Director DeAndre?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the main event here, the action items. And the first thing we're going to be discussing is why you are all here, and that is a discussion and possible action regarding funding and financing options for construction on Horizon Drive. So, go to that. This is I don't need to tell the people here, but this is an issue, ongoing question and concern that residents have had, and our board would, first of all, we are very happy that staff reached out to you and asked you to come in and talk. I will say that as a board member, I would have liked to have been present at that meeting. I like knowing what you guys know, and I want you to know what I know. So, but that said, it's good. This communication is happening, and we can maybe start figuring out what comes next. So with that, I will defer to
Yeah,
the,
and actually, start right where you left off there, is that we did have a meeting with a lot of the homeowners from Horizon that you see here in the audience this evening. History with it, this has been going back for well into the early 90s. I found some documentation that it was the early 90s that this was back and forth of a discussion. I think the biggest thing that has happened in that time, you know, and most of my board members know this, and I think most of the homeowners know this too, but I'll reiterate it, that with the activities on the south side of 246 there with the Golden Inn, it provided an opportunity to get some gravity and some pump stations in that vicinity that will then serve Horizon in places north. The prior board authorized that we cross underneath 246 while that was going on, so we got with Caltrans and got it underneath the highway. So those obstacles are out of the way there. And now we're back to how do we fund it, when do we fund it, and on Wednesday, that's where we basically got it down to with the two different options that the district construct and put the lines in, or back to how do we go about, and this is, gosh, probably the first time that this board, this district's done one since Project 1 and 2 probably, you know, so it's been 20-some years, we just paid those off. So projects 1 and 2 are country road up north there. So it's probably been 20 years since the district has done any line extensions itself. So do apologize for the procedure. We don't have a time-honored procedure how the district's done it because it's been 2 decades since we've done it. So that was a lot of the conversation. And so back to, rather than doing the back and forth, it's back to let's get the board together as a governing body and then gauge the amount of interest from the residents and have that open dialogue so that you can send that back to staff that, yes, we'd like to do it this way, we'd like to do it that way, yes, we have the interest, no, we don't. Set those points as that we need 25% participation, we need 50% participation, or some sort of guarantee that we invest that money that we'll recoup it over a X amount of period of time, and set what that period of time recoup might be. But so that was really the intent, was that yes, sorry that you couldn't be at the meeting, but
well, I could have been,
this is just
had I been invited.
This is just an extension of that, you know, back to, heard what they said, we've got some interested parties in there, and then to start that dialogue now, you know, as to questions as to staff. You know, that yes, we have some preliminary plans, back to what you heard, there was that bigger plan. The sewer's on the north side of the highway now, and we pretty much have left it there as time has gone along, and for some technical reasons, you know, one of them being the huge gas line running up Refugio. So we currently have plans that we could go over that way to come up. Our preferred means of entry would be past the San Dakota. There's an easement, there's a homeowner in between, and then one other easement we need to obtain at the far north end. And to look into getting those easements possibly, and getting some better plans. In doing a little research, I have some alternate ideas that, you know, they could be more affordable. But if we went those routes, then that line wouldn't be able to serve people further to the north later. So that's where it lays, is that we're right there again, actually probably closer than we have been in the past, because there is a sewer line within 900 foot or so of the Horizon Road itself proper. And now I just want to have that dialogue back to what do I need to bring from the citizens to the board, or the board to the citizens to keep this moving along?
Well, I think this is it right here, and it's wonderful. There's obviously great interest, and reaching out has got people here, and we can start moving forward with the solution. I appreciate that. I hope that we don't get redundant here. I really would have enjoyed being at your meeting a week or two ago, because we will have an opportunity for you all to comment tonight, but I would like to know what the residents are thinking, what exactly your interest in how you want to proceed here is, and what you discussed and what you said was what you were looking for from this board. Do any of the other directors have any questions before we open it up for some comments?
How far along have we gotten with the whole easement? I know we were starting to discuss that with
We have,
It's partially with San Dakota and then with a homeowner with a right of way.
and all of the above things there. So where we're at with that is that we drew up the preliminary plans, we had some preliminary discussions. And then we had this gap period now, you know, where things changed. And,
What changed?
we have a different board now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Well,
I've
just
got,
to be clear,
I've got a different board now, so I have a different set of expectations and hurdles before moving forward with this project. So we put that on the back burner. But we had those preliminary plans, we had some of those preliminary discussions through a firm called Jewel, which is the easement attaining company or so. But
The
Jewel
controls
and
for
Hammer.
the easements?
yeah, they specialize in that.
Excuse me, do you have an alternative if one of the three, we have San Dakota, then there's 2 single-family residences to get to Horizon, is that correct? Easements?
Through the, and to back up, with the monies that we received from Environmental Health Services to do a preliminary layout, and then moving forward with the prior board, getting the initial money to do probably, actually they're pretty good drawings really, but call it a 20 or 30% complete design. That was the original layout that we went, because it was just that straight and simple one. But since then, we've had the change of the board, so we haven't picked it up and ran with it.
Okay, question, supposing someone says not, do we have an alternative? Would that be Refugio?
You know, actually, back to the question you're asking right now, is that it's gauging the interest from the homeowners that we have, whatever that tipping point is. And then my proposal really is, once we get past the San Dakota and deal with the next property, somewhere in there, actually launch and do a directional bore too, to save people's landscaping, everything else, to get out to Horizon. So in that time frame, that's probably one of the critical pieces that have changed. So with that, that gives us a little bit of an angle that we can move different directions with that drill. Ideally, yes, we want to go up someone's easement, but we don't necessarily need to take the fence out and do everything else.
So that doesn't stop it from going that way if someone backs out?
We would just need, well, a launching pit easement, which could be like, let's say 24 by 24, that's pretty comfortable. You know, you have a construction on that, a manhole would end up there, so it'd end up being the normal 10-foot type of easement, 10 or 15-foot type of easement on the center line of that. And then obtaining the same theoretical easement overhead, but not going with the construction portion. Boring it out to Horizon, and then surfacing there, and then going both ways with gravity line.
So
But we haven't gotten that far with those different homeowners.
So in essence, that would be the fail-safe to make that functional to get the line to Horizon, should ever someone not participate, correct?
Is one of those alternates?
Yeah.
Correct, yes, because going up 246, I would have to get a new cost estimate, but there's a gas line there, so I've been trying to stay away from that. I meant big gas line, not just like a
Well,
two-inch.
if you're going up 246, if you went down Refugio.
Well, I'm sorry, for Fufio where it really is.
Yeah, okay.
It starts on the south side of the road, and on the south side, there's a bus stop right there. And somewhere right around in there, it starts curving to the north. Actually, there's 2 of them. They start curving to the north, right through the intersection, and then end up kind of messing everything else up for digging as you go up by the YMCA. Once you get past the YMCA a little further up, then there is a equestrian easement there that theoretically could be used for this. But once again, a lot more disturbance and probable cost. So.
Okay, so
Yes, there's all.
access would not be a problem with the alternative, should we have a problem? So that's not a stumbling block for us, is that a fair statement?
For the next 3 or 4 months. How long do we have the Caltrans permit for? November. Until November, we have a current permit for the stuff in front of
San Dakota?
San Dakota to the YMCA.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had those plans, and Caltrans has let us extend it to November. In theory, we could probably extend a little further, but once again, they kind of sat dormant for a year and a half now.
And you have to go to start from square A, should you not extend it?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
And that's Caltrans, which is a whole topic. So that's where we sit. So that's where, back to the 2.5 decades going back and forth with this, is that, and then it also serves potentially stuff further to the north. The original idea, and why it was so deep coming across, was we were hoping we could get the stadium. But And we could service this part of stadium, the eastern part, but it just probably doesn't pencil out if you have to do the, county crossing under the road there too. So it's probably.
You go back through, if you did stadium, that's coming on the other side, which would be part
The
of.
original design, that's why it's so deep and where we have some other options, is that this line, as deep as we can get it right now, and as flat as we can get it, so that then by the time we got over, we did have it so that by the time you got over here by the, almost the end of, stadium, it was about 5 or 6 foot deep, but still not deep enough to service then the lower part. But anyway, that just gives you an idea of one of the places where still some of that could be served, because the, long-term wise, that area is gonna have to come out and go underneath the highway somewhere west of the high school down there. You know, so that's another thought and process and gaining support later on. But so yes, back to though, it has the potential to go up and then service some of Deer Trail and that area in the future.
And that would go up for a food field going north?
It is one of the potential alignments.
Okay.
When you had your public outreach meeting, did you talk about cost to the individual property owner?
Well, and that's back to the cart and horse thing that we get into, is that the level of detailed plans I have right now, yeah, it can be anywhere from, and they've heard in the past, $50,000 down to maybe $25,000. But that's once again that level of detail that we don't have, that we have some preliminary idea that, I believe the handout that I had, it was like $370,000. You add in some of the others, we've been estimating $500,000 for the last couple of years. But once again, crude number, so no, can't get it down to that your portion of this would be $27,482.32. So we don't have that level of detail, we just have that approximate range. And of course, the conversation, more or less as you can imagine, being on fixed incomes, where that's a huge chunk of change, or we don't need it right now type of things, is what drives it. Once you get to, I think in the past, it's been north of 30 to 50, people lose interest at that point. Today, what has changed is we do have the LAMP, the Local Agency Management Plan, and some of the septic systems are failing, and you can't have a dry well anymore, you know, so those are just not allowed. And the only other real option then is to go into like the little treatment plant in your backyard, a mechanical system of some variety. So now that system in your backyard or hooking up the sewer, those numbers come close. But down to that, no. Because I would need from the board then the approval to come up with that budget, as we were just talking about in our last meeting, of $30,000 to $50,000 to have the engineers drive it to the next level, and that next level of detail, get the easements. And actually, that could be $75,000. So, no, I don't have the final number type of thing. So that's where we get in that chicken and egg, cart and horse.
If I may, we want them to know everything. That's to bring the line, a stub to their property. That doesn't hook them up,
Yeah.
correct? That's, you're aware of that. Okay, so that's on you. The cost to bring it from abandoning your system, bringing it up to where they stub it out, that's at your cost. So we just want you to know, we'll put it all on the table for you so everybody has the same information. Okay, so you're aware of that. Okay, good. Then we can continue. Thank you.
At this point, I would really like to hear some comments from the public, because we were not, nobody from the board was at this meeting, and it will help the board give staff direction when the people who we will be serving give us some direction. Obviously, there's a lot of interest here, and we want to be able to help and work together. So, does anyone have any comments or any questions? Yes.
My name is Peggy Ivy. I live at 3066 Horizon Drive. I was annexed to this district in 1995. I have been paying for a sewer since 1995 and never had that. We have constantly had the extra expense of porta potties, pumping out the more than usual, getting in static with the county because we're pumping once a year, you know. And I said, well, that's the only way that we can survive and to do this. And if I heard him correctly, he mentioned about that there was a cheaper route to do this, but it would eliminate you going further north or offering it further north. Did I understand that correctly? Because I am sick and tired of me being pushed to the back burner and nothing being done because you want to add this person, or you want to go add that person, or you want to do this, or you want to do that. Horizon Drive needs to be taken care of. And at the time, the previous board came to me and asked us not to protest bringing in the YMCA or the Golden Inn or this or that, because they could bring the line right up and then bring it to Horizon Drive. I've been told that a dozen times, but yet it never happens. It never happens. But yet, when they built the Y and they put in the pool, they changed the aquifer under our property. So if you go down to my property, and I've got proof, you can go across my yard. I had them to drill across the yard. They went down. They hit water all the way across the front. 6 feet, they hit water. They went all the way down the side. 6 feet, they hit water. All the way to the back. And this is an acre of land. All the way back to the back of the property. Crossways everywhere. They kept hitting water. Because I was trying to see if I could have another dry well put in. And I had guys coming in from Ventura that could take the concrete thing and just shove it down in the water, you know, and force it down. But even the engineers said that couldn't happen. So we could never put a pool on our property because there's too much water. And a lot of that was caused because the aquifer was changed with all that construction and putting a pool in over at the YMCA. So I also know from the previous boards, we were told that there were state grants and nobody applied for them. There should still be some state grants to come, but something needs to be done, and we should not be put on the back burner anymore.
And that's been going on for closer to 40 years than it is 20.
Yeah.
And you are Mr. and Mrs. Ivy? Did I
Yes.
get- I hear your frustration.
And I'm a little frustrated, just like you are. I didn't get an invitation to that meeting, and I've been paying for a sewer since 1995. Why couldn't, you know, only way I found out about it was some of the neighbors told me. Peggy, you weren't at the meeting. I didn't know anything about the meeting.
All I can say to that is that your address must be somewhere else, because we go off of the APN numbers.
Honey, my address has been the same.
Let me address that. I apologize. You should have been notified. There have been communication problems between agencies and the people that serve them. And I think we're seeing some changes on boards because of that frustration. And if somebody encourages me not to protest, it's probably going to encourage me to protest. So I'm glad you're here, and I definitely hear your frustration, and we do want to help you. Yes, Penny Knowles.
I just wondered, is the reason that the board did not participate in this meeting due to the Brown Act?
We could have been, oh, go ahead, David.
All of us could not, but some of us could.
Right, so all of you couldn't, but one or two could have attended and not be in violation of the Brown Act.
And we could have been notified that a meeting was happening. And, you know, the Brown Act, we can't make decisions, and you know, things have to be properly noticed. You're very familiar with it. But as far as knowing, we all like to know, and we like information. And it also, this is new for staff also. Later in the meeting, if you stay, you'll see that we are working on public outreach right now. We're also working on videotaping meetings. We understand that people can't always get out and go to meetings, but it would be nice to be able to refer back and see what was said so we can have a deeper understanding. So I appreciate that, and I think your point is well taken, Penny. There are legitimate reasons to not include the board in a public outreach meeting. The board should know that it's happening or have an agenda or a way to get that information. And these are the things that we're working on as a new board, so I appreciate that. I would like to hear if there are other people besides the IDs. That was very helpful to learn about. Do your partner, you, sir?
Gary and Jody Waples, we actually live across the street from the Ivies. When we bought our house, we were not told that the backyard floods occasionally. And when it floods, our septic system fills to the top. And the septic people know about that. I've called them to have it pumped out, and they say, don't pump it out while it's still wet. Wait until it dries out a little bit. In fact, go outside your side gate and just lift off that lid and let it air out. And it's fine, it doesn't bubble up or anything, and I actually have a pipe on there with holes in it, so it can air. But yes, we've had, in fact, we belong to the YMCA, so that when it does rain and flood, we have a place to go and use a restroom and a shower.
It's our quality of life.
And we've been dealing with this since we moved there in 2000.
I, once again, hear the frustration, and this is a problem that needs to be solved. It's not just the inconvenience. There's a lot more to it than that. It also involves property value. So this is a big decision and a big investment. Are there other people that would like to comment?
Question.
Yes.
Bob Furman, I'm living north of Refugio, my driveway comes out on the horizon, so thank you for being my neighbor. I have a question on the easement. I'm forgetting his name now.
Jeff.
You said, the motel, the people behind the motel. How about those two people on Horizon Drive where you have to go?
At least one of them, yes.
Just one?
Or potentially more, but once again, that's all preliminary. Back to,
I mean, do we need an easement
yes.
granted from the two people that will abut the line as it comes into Horizon?
The starting point is, no, we only want one.
Okay.
You know, we only want it on one side. It could end up that it needs to go down the property line and we get 7 or 8 foot on both sides, but the goal is just that way we only end up with 3.
Just one more other than the two you already technically have.
Well, we're
Well, the
working.
motel and they were here.
But ideally one, but no guarantees of that, but yeah, for a total of 3.
Jeff, when I went to the county and was talking to them about what I needed to do to get on the sewer, I was told that they could come down, if I wanted to hire a contractor, they could come down from Refugio, right down the middle of Horizon Drive to my house. That I would only have to pay then for the street to be repaved.
Yeah. Just so you're all really clear, we have no affiliation with the county and there is no sewer line in Refugio. So.
When you got it at the high school, they said it was at the high school.
The high school has their own private system that comes out by the bus stop on that side, but it's their own private one. It enters the public system out by the bus stop there,
Oh, I see.
but they have their private one. And the YMCA has a lift station that's a private line that goes over that similar area, but there is no public sewer over there. So, and it gets back to why I was explaining that one of the reasons probably has been for the longest time, there are no gravity sewer lines in that area. Everything was on the south. The Golden Inn came in, we had them do away with about 800 foot of forced main and also put in a lift station designed in such a way that if no one else ever attaches to it, it works great, or it could go up to 75,000 gallons a day. And then the prior board approved going across the highway, and so now we're right there at the YMCA San Jacoby. So that's
Was you
true
part,
now.
was you here with the previous board?
I've been here for 5 years, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me then why the board felt that it was more important to do the Golden Inn rather than addressing residents' problems that had been waiting for years?
The Golden Inn actually facilitated this, or we wouldn't be having this discussion. If the Golden Inn hadn't gone in, there would still be landlocked up there. The nearest sewer line, otherwise gravity, is way back down at the entrance to the casino.
Oh.
Yeah, so all of this other was a force main, which in small town, it's not easy to pump into it again. So that's really what facilitated, because this blue line back here is all a force main, because right now, San Ynez comes down to a lift station right there at the intersection of Highway 246 and Casino Drive, and then it's pumped up, and it used to go gravity right in front of, El Rancho, that area. But then they moved that gravity line all the way back to their side of the road, and then right down here, they have a pump station. But that's where we had to come out gravity at their cost, and then we extended across the highway. But that wasn't there before, so, well, it's like it was depicted on here. There was nothing within a mile.
Thank
So,
you.
yes.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ivy, where are you? Are you the third property south or east of Refugio?
Yes.
We're the third,
Yes, okay, know where you are. Thank
third
you.
house on the right.
Yes, I know where you are.
Or third on the left. I do have a question.
Sir.
Many years ago, there was a discussion about our area being condemned for the sewers, for the septic system being a condemned situation, kind of like,
Los Osos?
Nyborg Estate, not
Oh.
Nyborg.
Janet?
Janet Acres. Has that actually happened, that we are condemned such that if I have to pump out my septic system every year, I don't have to replace it yet? Because we're in the process of getting a sewer.
That would be a question for environmental services. I don't know the answer to that. And they have a new gentleman that's been, they had some retirements, and now they finally have one of their staff members who's been in that position now 7 or 8 months, and I believe with the organization about 5 or 6. But it'd really be his interpretation and enforcement of that LAMP, the local agency management plan. We do know from our standpoint, the phone calls we get, either from, his name's Jason, from Environmental Health Services, or some of the property owners that are faced with exactly that. And what they're faced with then is typically then buying the advanced system, which is buying a little wastewater treatment plant for your backyard or front yard. So I wouldn't call it condemned, but those are the two choices that you'll probably be faced with, is that, well, right now, they probably are giving a little grace period because we're trying to get there. And it was Environmental Health Services that funded us looking at this. As they were coming forward with their plans, back to what little grant money was left, we're like, okay, we've talked it to death. I need something that at least has where lines might go. And so that's what we have now, is where lines might go. Obviously, that's been 3 or 4 years ago, and that's kind of changed, but at least we have that document. And then, yes, back to, you guys are both back to the 25 years, and we're very cognitive of several of the places that were annexed here, and then there's some over on Stadium, same way we've been annexed from day one. So it's not our call on that, but it is kind of an either-or situation now, that we know dry wells aren't allowed anymore. So if that's what we're relying on, and your system gets in that bad category, yes, we're gonna have to abandon the dry well and go with something else.
I have a question for our council, Mr. Battles. When people are annexed into our district and they are paying a fee, even though there's no capacity charge, what does that fee entitle them to? The Ivies have been paying to be a part of this district, and so what is our district's obligation or responsibility?
I think the fee that.
Well, I can answer that, because I brought up that question in 1997. I went all the way to the state capitol about it. And there was a law put on the books in 1997 that states no utility can provide services or charge for services without providing the services. But yet on page 13, I think, at the very bottom of that law, there's a one-line sentence that says sewer systems is exempt. One-line sentence.
Okay, I would like Mr. Battles to respond, because as neighbors, and also, we were recently given a white paper that was done in 2002 that talked about our philosophy and serving our neighbors, the district, and the neighbors around the district. But would you like to respond to the question, Mr. Battles?
The district has what it calls a sewer benefit fee that's been in place since long before I came along, and I don't know what study supports the imposition of that, but my understanding is it applies if you have a sewer line in front of your property, and since you have access to it, it's and I think it's $50 a year or some relatively low number, $49 a year, the sewer benefit fee. But my understanding is that's only that
fee is only collected if there's a sewer line currently existing in front of your parcel and you're annexed. And so I would think that you wouldn't have that fee imposed for your property if there's not a sewer line there. So I don't know what fee it is that you've been paying that's associated with sewer.
Well, it's on my tax bill. Ever since 1995.
You,
I don't think staff is aware of any fee that would be imposed.
I believe you, they did a lot of spot annexations back then.
Yeah,
Bob Braitman,
yeah, Bob is the one that got it approved and did all that,
and
yeah.
I remember them saying that, which may be in conflict to what the counselor was saying, that there would be a charge because you are annexed, even though you're not receiving any benefit of the sewer itself. Now, I don't know how enforceable that was. I remember that dialogue going back and forth with the audience and to, at that time, I guess it was the other manager who was here for some time.
Yeah.
Back then when we were trying to do that.
So I would say that there is also a, part of the 1% property tax money gets allocated to the district. It's essentially a pie, and all of the agencies that have their jurisdictions overlap with your property get a percentage of that 1% money, and the district gets some small percentage, and that's just something the district receives from the property taxes. So you still say, you pay the same 1% of your assessed value in property taxes, whether you're in the district or not.
Mine is listed on my
allocated.
property taxes separate, just like a bond.
It's state San Ynez Community
It
Service
says sewer
District.
for this district,
Yeah,
and there's a charge.
What's your address?
3066 Horizon Drive. You can look it up on the tax.
so you're charged there just like the water district. You have its own,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay, very much aware of that.
I would say, we have asked as a board, and Jeff is right, there has been a change. There was a board in place for a number of years, and we have pretty much a fresh board. We're an experienced board, but we obviously see the need. We've been asking how many people want this, because there is a financial angle here, and there are other people that live in this district. And so as a board member, I have a responsibility of saying, am I going to authorize staff to spend $500,000 to service 3 houses who are gonna pitch in $6,000, you know, that kind of math. So we need the math to work, but this is clearly a problem that needs to be dealt with, and it's also, it's an unfunded mandate again, and, you know, we talk a lot, the state orders us to do things, but then we're on our own to pay for fulfilling this obligation. And I believe that as a board, we certainly have a moral obligation, and we may have some legal obligation as well, to start taking action and stop just talking about how we're going to fix this problem. I would like to hear from other board members, obviously.
I mean, that's one of my concerns, is the financing of it, and how many people are actually want to hook up. I haven't heard any opposition about hooking up, but I haven't heard any commitment either.
Well, wasn't the survey sent out to 22 and 11 favored? The results
Yeah.
showed 11 favored.
That's what I want to
Yeah,
find out.
we've had that, but then still back to the, well, what's that final cost?
Right.
Well, out of the 11 who are interested, favor having sewer, that's wonderful, but when it comes down to it, out of that 11, what's the percentile who say, I'm willing to hook up, I'm willing to do it now? That is where the nucleus of
But
this
no,
is.
it's the cart problem. Nobody can say
Right.
yes until we have the numbers.
And we're gonna get you the numbers.
We definitely will be authorizing that, but I see Ann Wooten has a comment or question.
3146 Horizon Drive, and I think the issue that we have is that now the county environmental district or department is involved. So what they term as a failure on your septic system, and this is just starting now, so you know how things go. It's gonna get more and more stringent on everyone who has a septic system. So on Horizon, we have the myriad. We have those that are doing fine and probably will. We have those that get pumped periodically. We have those that get pumped a little more than that, and then we have those in severe need. So we're in all different stages on the street. My concern is that even though we might be okay now, the county's gonna come in with environmental health and the state, and we're gonna ask for one minor thing to be done on our system, and we're gonna be termed, that's it, you're now hash mark, you're now deficient, and you have to put in your own mini system, which I'm not sure what the cost is, but I understand it's like 10 to 15,000 to do that.
More than that.
20, 15.
It's
And it's monitored and it's, you know, it's entirely environmental, to the nth degree. So I think that is our concern. We may not be in dire need right now, we may be sufficient, but that's not to say another year from now or two, we won't be in a problem area. So I think you have people who probably would be willing to pay for the line to get there, because it'd be cheaper now than it will be in 5 years. Get that line there and then we hook up as we're able to. We just don't know what the cost is. So our impression from the meeting last week was that we could request you to fund a study to give us the analysis for the cost.
I think that is a very fair thing, and I would like to discuss this as a board now. I know that we have questions also as a board. I know that people who live in the district have questions how that will affect their bill. Once again, if we do, and believe it or not, there are actually $1 million studies. It's crazy. This won't be that. But, you know, the cost does matter. It does have to be taken into consideration, just as it does for you as homeowners, how you proceed. But I do see a responsibility as a board and as a citizen that infrastructure is an investment that is different than a commercial investment. And that is a factor here too. This has to pencil out for the district. Yes, Mr. Redfern.
I recall back when this went in, the sewer district went into the township of San Ynez, that you didn't have to connect when we ran the lines, but the property ever did sell.
Yep.
It had to connect at that time. That was not an option. So, I don't know if that helps you, but that's a piece of history.
Well, that does help me. I'm not sure how, but that's very interesting. Because are you proposing that that is a condition of this, or that that is a condition of the people that currently own the property?
Well, if I can, yeah, with that real quick, you're getting environmental health services and people that make that decision, so that's outside of our jurisdiction.
It's outside of our jurisdiction, but it is our
So you can say that you put a sewer
consideration.
line in front of there, but it's the environmental health services that ultimately makes that decision that it's time for you to hook up or not.
They're the
There
enforcement.
was a
Yes.
rule here when Ron Larson was manager that the lines there upon close of escrow, exchange of sale, you would have to hook up. The new people would hook up, so that puts the logistics on a sale. So that's gonna affect the price of the property. It may kill the deal, I don't know. I'm just saying, but that was an agreement. I don't know the logistics of the legalities of it, but that's how it was written and implemented to the township.
Jeff, what's it gonna cost to do the study?
Well, that's a very good question.
Do we need to go out and get bids?
You know, actually, we have the professional services, we have Canon Engineering that did the preliminary engineering, you know, so it wouldn't make sense to then jump ship, but I need to ask Rick what we need to do on a professional contract like that, but yes, it's definitely gonna be more than $25,000, which is pretty much my spending limit on it. But back to there are already professional services, they've already delivered the deliverable that, you know, you can find, anyway, that you hand out. We have a starting point, so it's really a matter of just logistics, and then coming back at, I guess what I'm saying is I could get them started on some of the preliminary, and by our next board meeting or special board meeting, have the real estimate from the engineer saying that it would be X amount of that professional services allowable.
What's your professional guess, ballpark figure it would run to complete it, the survey on the extension? 25 is not, it's gonna be higher. What would you guess it to be with your experience?
It was kind of, well, past experience, yeah, that'd be enough. Experience today could be 100,000. This was kind of our conversation we had earlier.
Yeah.
It's a tight market right now. Everyone's at the moment fully engaged.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems like a high dollar project, but
Was it
Yeah.
$75,000 to do the study on building the new plant?
That was our portion, that was actually $150,000.
Okay, because I'm just trying to relate to the
The state,
size.
yeah, so it hints back to the 25 to 75, you know. The entire, EHS gave us $160,000 to do the study of the entire area, that got all this kind of rolling to the next level. But yet, no, I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it's just a matter of calling the engineer, seeing what his time would be.
I think, well,
Why don't we just, like, today we've been rolling.
I agree.
I think, I'd like to make a motion that we get or direct the staff to get a bid on what it's gonna cost to do this study, so that we can move forward with this and have we can make an educated decision.
Okay, I agree with that. I would like to ask Rick Battles if that is the proper wording for the motion. Will that suffice? Directing staff to.
Do we need to do a vote, or do we just need to direct staff?
There is consensus of this board to proceed.
If there's a clear consensus, you're not approving the expenditure of any money, I think it's fine to give staff direction in that regard. If you don't want to go through the formality of a motion and a second and a vote.
I agree with Director D'Ambra. We had a great meeting today, and it feels good to do things. The Ivies are a perfect example. We can talk this thing to death and still have the problem. Let's start some action. And I am glad Penny Knowles is here from We Watch. I'm glad that you're watching. And you made the Brown Act comment, which was good. But we like input because we're all learning. And there are things, questions, comments that people bring to this board that will really help advise us. But we want to do the right thing here. So we have a motion by Director Beard. We can go ahead and make it formal if that helps, but clearly there's consensus.
I might even change that motion and maybe just give you a spending limit.
Yeah.
And say, make it happen. So,
Well, you weren't even at the meeting and you're instructing everybody.
It's contagious.
50, I'd even like to just suggest that if it's 50K, you just go ahead and do it. And if it's over that, you come back to the board with that number.
Well, I feel like we're in a niceness bidding war. I want to say, let's go 75, baby. Okay, Wendy has a question.
So, you want to make that motion? But we have a motion on the table, so do we want to
That one can die because
dive
you,
into that motion?
it's more of a consensus.
Yeah, it's more of a
meeting.
consensus.
Okay.
Well, if we're authorizing spending, then there is going to be a motion and a vote because we're talking about spending money. And so we have a motion for $50,000. We had just some casual conversation earlier about the cost. Now we have a comment here, Mr. Redfern.
Where are we coming up with this 50,000? And are we just pulling that out from under a hat or?
No, that's back to extensive experience in dealing with these people day to day. You know, engineer, $250, $300 an hour. You can see how it gets to that number quite quickly. A sheet of drawings, you know, you're looking at a good sheet can be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. You know, so you quickly add that up. So it's professional experience.
But I would like to say, as a citizen who is experienced on the receiving end of this stuff, that it was an interesting thing. I won't venture off in a way that I get off the agenda. But today, Jeff was in the opposite role where he was like, come on, we don't need that $1 million study kind of deal. These are things we can make decisions on ourselves. So I'm with you there that some of these studies would blow your mind how much they cost. But because we have visited this, Frank and I were on the last board. This is my 3rd year serving. These two gentlemen were elected in the last election. Frank has served slightly longer than me. But these were the numbers. If you guys want to proceed and you want the engineering study done, I can tell you what, and it does feel like a racket. You know, like these governments hire these consulting companies and there's just this loop of huge money going on. And yet, I don't believe that there is a way to get you the answer that you need for us to proceed without spending a significant amount of money here.
And thank you, I'll build upon that, because yeah, if the homeowners wanted to take on the additional risk, I could sit here back to the question and tell you, yeah, we could probably get y'all hooked up for under $60,000 a piece. But it's back to needing that level of detail, gotta run through the engineers, so that I transfer the risk to the engineers, that they're coming up with a real number. Back to just what she was saying, I mean, if this was a different world and maybe a different state, I would be asking for a backhoe and a little bit of pipe budget, and we get this going. Literally. I mean, it's not that big of a project. It's not that costly if we could just do it in-house, but unfortunately, it's not like, and then you still wouldn't really know the number. You know, we kind of talked about that at the meeting, you know. But yeah, very, very good questions all around, but it's just, you know, how close do you want to get to that final number?
Oh, I see that a gentleman has a comment, but I also would like to say about Frank saying 50 and then me saying, hey, if it's going to be 75, let's go for it kind of stuff. But I would say we would, as a board, maybe be interested in authorizing an up to amount rather than saying, here's 75, because once it's authorized, it's going to be spent, folks. That's just, you know, how it works. But, sir, you had a comment.
My question, Jeff, is when the study is done, are the costs that are gonna come out of it just to put the sewer line to Horizon Drive, or will it also contain an estimate of what it might take for an individual homeowner to hook up to the sewer line?
Meaning your last from the
my last 300
Great
feet.
question. That's the part that matters to those of us in this room.
Yeah,
And the septic system.
yeah.
You know, typically that's 5 to 10. When we did it in late 90s, Frank,
That sounds like 50,000 right now then.
I mean, 5 to 10, I'm talking abandoning your system to get to the line. 5 to 10 is probably a pretty static number. It was from back then to today. I don't think that's where you can put the backhoe in, the pipe in. You know, it probably costs just $1,000 to pump it, fill it with rock, maybe another 1,000. Run the 4-inch black line to the stub through your property, and depending if you have to go under concrete or you're going to go through your garden or fence, and then you got a few feet of blacktop to get there.
But if I can't, all of a sudden we've jumped into the private side of things, though.
Right.
And so that's why we stopped at the property line, because now it's become private. Each one's going to be different.
Yes.
I think if we did an assessment district, which ups the cost overall, well, then we could include that in there, but then the costs get even crazier because it's a full assessment district. So with that, we would go for a bond or a loan, and then we have the vote, and there's just a few more layers with it right now.
One person at a time. I would like to recognize Ms. Knowles.
It strikes me as bizarre that there aren't templates for this kind of thing. I mean, you're not the only sewer system in California, or even in Santa Barbara County. Why can't we learn from others? Why do we have to invent our own system? Our own way of costing it out? You'd think that there would be some stable cost basis for these things. I mean, I don't know anything.
No, there is a template, and that's part of what was shocking to me. You know, there's a difference. I went to meetings, and then I ended up being on the other side of the table, and it's a little bit shocking. But there was a study done that cost $150,000, and yes, there were professional people who put a lot of hours into it, but it seemed like an awful lot of money. I'm just doing a Google search, and I found the exact same study for a city 60 miles south of here, but instead of saying Santa Ynez, it said Carpinteria. It was almost, you know, there were some differences because, you know, they've got Sandy around this, but there are templates, and so I'm glad you guys are questioning the amount. But I know that in the 3 years that I've sat here, this is the money that has been expended to move forward. And I'm glad you're challenging us on it because it really does feel like a racket. Maybe that's just, maybe I'm old and I'm my grandmother going, oh my goodness, look at the price of bread. I don't know. David. Yes, sir.
A couple more questions. One, our front yard happens to be a flood control basin. we then have to go to flood control to get permission to dig through that? And that will cost us more. And then I need to go out for a separate plumber or somebody to come hook up. Where do I tell them it's gotta go to? The middle of the street?
No, we bring that part of the answer, that would be to your property.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So to that, do I have the choice of where on my property?
thank you, that's what I was just gonna comment on it. You know, if it proceeds forward with that, the most important thing, and back to, from what I'm hearing here, the county database, we need your address and stuff so we can actually reach out to you, is if we got to that point, is exactly that. Where is your septic tank? Where would you like to hook up? Back to, rather than having engineers look at it, it's like, yeah, no, Gary, it might cost you a couple extra dollars, but I see you don't wanna go through that landscaping, so we'll dog leg and move it over there.
I'd rather go through the landscape.
You know, but right now, some of the other aspects with how deep it could be, you should be able to get from your properties to wherever, ideally we want it within the boundaries of your property.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
no problem.
I mean, but within the boundaries of your property, and we should be able to be, 10, 15 foot deep, which if you do that at a quarter to 0.5% back, you can get a long ways back, with the 4-inch, and we can go other ways. But yeah, that would be the plan to work with you on that part of it. But yeah, back to some of those other little ones, that's where, unfortunately, we go from being a public entity to then answering the public or the private ones, and we no longer have jurisdiction or the communication.
This is just very frustrating to me because, as I said, this is a responsibility that we have as citizens and a community to make sure that, we are able to have a decent standard of living and get the services that we expect. And I hear you loud and clear, and that's why Director Mueller made the motion.
I'm going to second Mueller's motion.
And just real quick, I can, I just want to explain that what I'm hearing, what I'm expending for, is getting those plans 60 to 70% complete so they're ready for bidding and construction. That way then the engineer can shop them around and get, those current prices. But that's what is the intent of taking the money they're allowing me to have there. What will it take to attain the easements? What will it take to get to basically bid-ready documents?
Is this feasible by the November Caltrans issue?
I think we'll get a better idea of that. So that part, yes. I mean, if it looks like, and timing was just, yes, reach out to the easements and stuff and see if that's going to be an issue. If it's not going to be an issue and we're able to get up and get out of the right of way and start heading north, then I don't feel the need to renew those plans. But we have a couple, I think I'll get a good level of comfort whether, yes, I need to ask for extension of another year or two on those plans, or we can abandon them, so. But yes on that.
Ann Wooten also has a comment, a question.
So that I'm clear on what you were saying. So the end result of the money that the board is authorizing to spend will give homeowners the detailed number of how much it would cost to hook up. What will it give us?
Well, and back to, just so we know the deliverable, you're probably gonna get within a, plus or minus 15 to 20% estimate on that.
And
Because
Director
until we actually
Beard,
go out to bid,
Director
I'm
Beard,
assuming it's not a cost for them to hook up, but it's going to cost to bring the line.
that's how I was interpreting
Oh,
that.
excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
To bring the
Okay.
line.
To bring the line in.
We know it's our responsibility from the line to the house.
Right,
We understand that.
And then there's also the connection fee
right.
that goes along with that.
But that should be a set.
Depending upon which alternative that was handed out is chosen, assessment district, third-party loan,
Right now, we're looking at the one, we're talking more of the district funding.
the district loan.
That's the one we're discussing at this
Number
point.
3, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Loan from the district.
And if it takes a turn and goes to assessment, well, you still need the same plan for the assessment, because the assessment is the same way, that then you have to spend even more money and get to about that 5% level to tell you what it's going to be. But obviously, that adds even more money to that level of detail.
Mr. Battle.
My point was, there's going to be the cost of constructing the sewer line extension. There's going to be the cost of abandoning the septic system and constructing a private lateral. There's also going to be a connection fee that the district collects to buy capacity in the system, including in the solving plant, and that's a big number. And so, it would be a fairly easy matter, I think, to tally all of those up so that the property owners can see it. The information we don't have right now is the cost of constructing the mainline extension. And so that's a number that would be on the list of expenses that you would have to incur before you could hook up.
And are you saying that our staff would be able to provide the list of the capacity fees and what it's gonna cost individual
Yeah, we
homeowner?
got that,
We-
you get it on
yes.
our website right now, but yeah, we can put it on a different,
Capacity fee's a static number, but it's the cost of,
they are not a static number, they change every year.
Based on the cost of living.
but a static like that as opposed to the number when we built the system, we don't know that. There's a big variance, 15, 20%
Well, your
on the
big,
construction. Right?
your big variance that you're potentially dealing with right now is the solving. I mean, that's what really makes up most of it, is the capacity connection part of the fee, which is $5,000 right now? 62 is just the solving component.
But I'm talking about, as the counselor said, to give them a zero in on the number to know what it's gonna cost your pocketbook. The capacity charge is fairly static, but we're zeroing in and we're funding this to get you that number of what it's gonna cost each individual person for the sewer, their participation in the extension of that line. That's the big number that we don't have a lot of play with right now because we don't know we're gonna fund for that. And still, until we get there exactly and get it bid, you're gonna be 15 to 20% off, so we'll be close, but not where we wanna be as a final number. Is that understandable?
How many feet of sewer line is it?
113, I don't have it memorized anymore, but.
Just curious.
No, you're reading my mind, because there's that, there's a number that people say, $1 million a mile or whatever, so you're trying to.
Sewer lines probably close to $200 a foot. That's not including a bunch of manholes.
Okay,
So and we up it a little bit once we get the pavement. I think I go $350 for pavement. Just because the county right now wants us to slurry from one side to the other. Through the board.
Oh, yes, Bob.
Sorry. I'm 40 feet from outlet to Refugio. I'm 80 feet to Horizon, so,
I know.
I'm between a rock and a hard spot.
We just to jump into those, when we discussed it the other day, going out to Refugio, the sewer line isn't planned to extend up that way just yet, and there's a gas line. So as I explained to him, you probably will incur, but we haven't ran the number yet because we haven't had time. It'd probably be cheaper to run around your house and down there than trying to fight with the gas line out front.
Okay, and before we do vote on the motion, I believe Mrs. Ivy had something else.
Yeah, I just wanted Jeff to confirm something. Doesn't all the property have to be annexed before we could do?
Everything's annexed now.
Everything's annexed?
Everything's, not the south side of the road, but all of San Ynez West, like 2 years ago. For exactly that, because that's what was holding us up before. You were annexed in our district, but you're an island right here.
Okay.
So you didn't even touch the YMCA, so there's nothing contiguous. So yeah, 2 years ago, we annexed all of it. So now that, because I couldn't do what what they might do here in a second, we couldn't expend those monies to get this answer. Now, since you're in our district, we can expend those monies, if that helps.
And I, a few years ago, Clean the Ocean was also offering, they were concerned about our failing septic system, and they were giving out grants and stuff to help people. And I think they help people in Carpinteria a lot. So
It's Heal the Ocean, and those
Heal the
grants
Ocean,
are
yeah.
gone. You know, that was a controversial claim. Those grants were available, but were pretty much gone by the time they came into play here. And so I know that our staff always goes after grants, and Jeff is very involved in different organizations, but we can't ever count on those. So when people tell you, and you'll get a grant, don't put it in the bank yet. So,
Don't even think about opening the account.
yes. But I heard that same thing, and people did pursue and not available. Maybe something will come available at some point, but that's not gonna be factored in. I want it factored in if I were you. So we have a motion.
A couple of comments. One, just to make the record clear, we should confirm whether Director Beard's motion was failed for lack of a second or was withdrawn when Director Mueller made his motion.
I believe it failed for lack of a second.
Okay, so the minutes can reflect that. And then it should be clear in the motion what the proposal will cover. And it sounds like from the discussion, it is to come up with a cost estimate for constructing this mainline extension to serve Verizon. And to come up with a cost estimate, my understanding would be they need to do additional preliminary design work, perhaps, or they can come up with the estimate just based on the design work that they've already done.
I think probably the key thing is kicking off with the easements. Because back to, as we've discussed, and it sounds like everyone's kind of aware of, that could drive where and how many easements we might need to be able to obtain.
Okay.
So that ties into what they're trying to, that they're asking. I will bring them, here's the redesign everything, get to bid worthiness. And then also, here's that subcomponent of the first 600 foot, so that then we can hire the company to go, or maybe the board wants to just have me go knock on doors and see if we can get the easements. But we need that part so people would see where the line would go and what that might look like.
Yeah, but we don't need
Are the
bid level design at this point. We just need something that's sufficient for them to come up with a cost estimate, wouldn't you say?
No, we're looking to that next level, because we have a document that says like $370,000. I have that, kind of what you just referred to, that 40% design type of thing.
Okay.
You know, and we can get copies, I had copies of that.
It's in the packet.
Oh, it's in the packet?
Yeah, I have it there.
Oh, 372,
Yeah,
there you go.
400.
Yeah, so that estimate, you don't have confidence in that estimate because it's based on only a 40% design. So to have a higher level of confidence in an estimate, we need a design that's more detailed and refined, bid ready design.
That's a catch-22 kind of question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you want to get to that level, if you haven't made the decision to proceed with the project, do you want to pay for essentially bid documents and a final design on a project that you haven't approved, or don't know if you'll go forward with and haven't decided how to fund, and don't know if there's property owner support for.
Right.
And that's why I thought it was important.
Well,
to
that
confirm
was
how
one of
much
my
detail-
questions. Are the property owners that need the easement, are they here tonight? That
That I
we
don't
need
know.
the easements from?
Can you repeat, please, what?
Are the property owners here that we need the easements from?
I saw one of them earlier, they left.
Here that you need, and then you dropped off, I'm sorry.
Are the property owners here that we need the easements to get to
Oh,
Verizon?
easements, from what I see, no, they are not.
Okay.
They left.
So that's part of the expense. I don't know if the engineers in their estimates plug in a number for the easements, or the Hammer and Jewel provides.
That's where it gets critical, because we got close to that last time, but then without acquiring that last easement, and then the realignment is really where we're at. But back to your question, no, that number's probably, pretty close, but it's back to, now that we've got the government involved and you get the tape, I mean, everyone's looking for well, wait a second, you told me that it'd be $29,000, and now it's $32,000. So in order to get that next increment, we basically need to get to the bid document. Because we have the 30 or 40% design here. Linear feet, that's not going to change significantly. I mean, the design here is not going to change much at all.
Jeff, is there a parcel on 246, either east or west of Santa Cota, if there's an issue, that you could just buy an easement through one parcel and get it over there? Is that doable? If, it might even be cheaper than to deal with three. One is always should be,
That would be another engineering one, because the way it's lined out, you have the gas station stuff, and their easement really goes out the road almost. So it becomes, we took some initial shots, some elevations and stuff, and just back to how long can we go with that gravity line to go back pick up the gas station, can we go much further?
So
But
Santa
I think we
Cruz,
start coming out of
okay.
the ground pretty quick, meaning,
Okay.
but that's something we can look at on a staff level and just see if we have that fall. I mean, that's simple.
I'm in
Triangulation.
agreement that we, as it suggested, I mean, you made the motion, Frank, so.
So, did you want, so you want to rephrase the motion to actually come up with a set of bid drawings? That's what we're doing.
Well, I was asking the question, is that really necessary
for
this
clarification.
purpose, you know?
I think it is. I think that's what I'm hearing.
That's
So we
what
need
you're
the bid
hearing.
drawings to really get a studied number.
I think in order for us to move forward, that's what we need.
Yeah, because you have the preliminary number in front of you, and hence why then we've been budgeting like $500,000.
Yeah, I would like to recognize Mr. Redfern.
What is it? If we don't have your easements in line for sure, what's the point of doing a study without
We would
having
get
a
the
for
easements.
sure way to go?
We would get the easements before we spent the money on
Right.
the drawings.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have the easement, you can't get one or two
Right.
or whatever, something comes up. You may have to go an entirely different route, which would make these plans.
Right.
Not a good point.
You know,
It's an
it sounds like a
excellent
good point, but the problem is when you show up to show the people, you run into the same thing we're running into with, well, how much does it cost? Everyone wants to know where you're going to put it. I mean, so that sounds like a really simple thing to do, but we've already ran into that people.
I didn't say it was simple.
They want to see where it's going to line up in their easement.
That's
I
one
don't
reason
think-
why I asked if the homeowners were here, that we needed the easement from.
I do not think it was simple, that you were saying simple, but it is a consideration because we did have a situation recently where as a board, we were trying to resolve something where there was some disagreement about easements. And I recall as a board, we discussed that maybe easement things need to be worked out prior to a decision. So, I mean, golly, I just feel really vacillating here. This is why this problem has not been dealt with. It is a tough one to respect everyone's rights and take everything into consideration because this is real money.
Well, we can make this subject to the easement verification, and then, once that's been approved, it's funded.
But the district has the power of eminent domain, so it can acquire the easement, it just has to pay
Fair market price.
fair market value for the easement, so, and generally that's negotiated with the property owner. Worst case, you go to court, they give you a right of entry, and then there's a determination regarding what the value is. So that's the only way public projects can go forward if an agency has that power. And we first make an effort to negotiate with the property owner.
Yes.
And that's the way you get most of your easements.
So that being said, we don't have to worry about the easement, saying yes, we can continue this, at least expedite this.
Well, once again, you know, back to they go hand in hand because once again, if I just show up knocking on people's doors saying we want to run a sewer line across here, it gets nowhere. You know, we put it on a yellow tablet, it still gets nowhere. And even if they do say yes, well then now all of a sudden we've got a 60-day or 90-day gap while I try to go get it drawn up that, well, here's where we would go when you sign this. You know, so it's just, it's the timing and everything else. If you go prepared, you're ready to move forward with it. You know, so hence, you need the plans, and then even what Rick is saying, if you ever get past that point of the eminent domain, you know, you're not gonna go anywhere in court if you walk in there, well, we have no plans, but we think we're gonna put the sewer line here. You know, it's just, once again, that yes, if I had a backhoe and this was, you know, a different state, we could go put in this line really cheaply, but back to the laws and then the needs of California, I've gotta have that laid out, that here's where the sewer line's gonna go, here's my need for that. So that's why I'm asking to have that up front, that here's the cost, here's where it's really gonna go. Oh, wait, no, that person doesn't want to give us an easement. So then we can, you know, realign this whole sewer line, and do we need to step over here, place a manhole, and run it that way? But then I have those to go to those homeowners, so they can see what it could theoretically look like in their backyard and where it would run. And then we can go out there and walk it. Here's what a 10-foot easement looks like. Here's what a 30-foot construction easement looks like. I mean, so that's why, unfortunately, you know, to me, I agree that we have to expend this money to get that level of detail versus having the conversation we just had.
Right.
Yeah, I would love to be able to just have that. and do that. 20 years ago, you used to do that, but.
And I think once the location of the sewer line is established based on this design, you'll know where you need to acquire an easement, and an estimate of the easement cost can be included in the overall project cost estimate.
Okay,
So that was one comment. I also wondered about the source of funds for this. One of the things Jeff and I have talked about is the fact that the district has reserves and has capacity reserves. It might be, but it's not clear that those reserves were collected for this purpose, with this being newly annexed property. So the only one way to determine whether or not there are funds in your reserve account that could be used for this purpose would be to ask a rate consultant to look at the source of funds and what the model looks like over the years, the prior years that developed the reserve that you have now. But some analysis should be done. I don't know, and budgeting, I don't know what the budget is. And I just want to raise that issue because it's not being addressed as part of the motion or the discussion tonight.
I do have a question. The Ivies have been in the district since '95, so this pipe is not serving the people that were annexed 2 years ago exclusively. It is serving people who were annexed 30 years ago, 20 years ago. So does that make a difference?
That could enter into the analysis, yeah.
To jump to the end on that one, some years ago, well, when I first got here, Wendy and I, we take out that 1% and kind of account for it a little clearer in the budget. And this is what we're going to kind of talk about, because then that's kind of almost our pseudo general fund. I mean, so if we
And there are funds there.
well, and that's the back to your analysis. We need to do that, but that's been our intent.
Okay.
Is for exactly this, that we do get some of that. I don't know if it was pre-prop 13 money or what, but we get some of that 1% that we were referring to earlier, and we pay for this government blending like that. We've made a real concerted effort to move that to things that benefit the greater good, all in anticipation of this. So I don't know if that generates $150,000 a year or what, but somewhere around those numbers. So
It would be nice if we could hold back on some of the hiring of consulting firms, if we don't need to get consultation about whether or not it's legal to dip from this or that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to avoid.
Yeah, I think if there's property tax
we
money
get
available,
$168,000.
and if that hasn't been earmarked or spent on something else, then that money is available for a project like this.
yeah, and
That
and
seems
Wendy said we get
appropriate.
approximately $168,000 a year total of that. Some goes to streetlights, some goes to the building and stuff. But
That's the general fund, so it means it could be
yeah.
applicable anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paid by all property owners. It's money, right? This comes from our property tax. These people paid into this.
And I think you used that property tax money for the preliminary estimate that you have.
We did.
Preliminary design. Okay. And then a couple, maybe final comment. The motion didn't specifically say that the proposal was going to be from Canon. That was the intent, that it would be, Jeff would solicit the proposal from Canon, and then the proposal wouldn't come back to you, but Jeff would have the authority to move forward and have them do the work so long as the cost doesn't exceed, what's the motion, 50 or 75? 50, okay, so long as, then Jeff would have that authority, he wouldn't have to bring the proposal back to you when he receives it.
That would move things along quicker. Once again, it's a lot of money, but I don't see any way that we can move forward without doing this. And we asked if there was interest among the residents. Clearly there is. So we have a motion, and I believe it's worded correctly. And it was Director Mueller's motion. It has been seconded by Director Beard. Am I in the right spot here, and now we go to roll call, or do we need to make a correction?
No,
We have to
I'm not clear on the motion, but this
Okay.
is what I have. Director Mueller, motion to spend up to $50,000 to get a cost estimate for constructing a mainline sewer extension down Horizon for a bid-ready design. Does that work?
Wouldn't that be bid ready? That's what we're looking for, right?
Okay,
Yeah, that gives us that level of detail.
so we have a
Should be
second by
10%.
Beard. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Beard?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Mueller?
Aye.
Director Gamble?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yay.
And once again, few new faces here, but as you saw earlier, obviously whatever database we're using doesn't have everyone's addresses, so if you can, it does? Oh, okay. So you should be receiving those there.
But does it have their email addresses? Because that's how I receive it.
Well,
That's the Wendy.
back,
And
to
back,
our
you should have received.
original questionnaire, we sent out forms to, ask if you're interested in sewer, if you need sewer, do you want more information, and what questions do you have? And then your, preferred communication. Some put email, some put mail. I do not have Mrs. Ivy's, so we need to get hers, I think,
So, yeah, if you would help us out that way, that we don't have yours, get that, if you know some of your neighbors, get us theirs, same with the email thing. And then we have that one button, and we can push it both to mail and email,
I currently have.
and telephone too, just in case.
We can find you if you owe us money. We can't always find you if we need to give you information, but somehow the bill always arrives, huh?
So I have, 21, questionnaires that were returned. I do have, a couple from Calipico, that have filled out theirs. So, Mrs. Ivy, I do need yours. But if you want to fill out your best point of contact on this list, then we'll have it again for the people that are here.
Thank you.
very much, but I do have yours.
Yeah.
So if you got an email, I do have it. So, so I sent, for the ones that preferred mail, I sent out mail. For the ones that preferred email, I sent out an email. And then I went through the list and checked off the ones, if I don't have a form, then they were mailed out a letter, so.
So ideally, with the motion, once I go through tomorrow morning and look at that precisely, would love to keep, obviously keep the board informed, but the same way, push the button out to you guys that, okay, I got on the phone yet, tomorrow morning, we can, and they're telling me like 2 weeks or so, but try and keep you in that loop too, so that you know what we know, when we know it.
Now, Jeff, this estimate that you're gonna get is the cost, right?
Correct.
So,
Of the
Is-
main line.
yeah, so do we participate equally into that cost?
Well, right now, that is pretty much the way we're leaning with this. With an assessment district, then they get into, well, you're a 2-acre lot versus a 1-acre lot or something like this, but this was more just going off of each.
But this, you're talking about the cost to bring the line down. We would all participate in that, and then we would also be responsible to hook up.
That last piece from your property out to the line, yes, that's always gonna be yours. You bring up a very, very good question, because that's still that tipping point of where the board, yes, we'll put in some of our money, knowing that we'll get half of you within 6 months to a year, or no, it's a 5 year, so that's still, I know one of the questions that the board has.
That's
Yes.
a decision
Ideally, we
have
love
to
that,
still-
Yes.
everyone, 11 people say, yes, we're gonna hook up, we're
That's a
paying.
decision we have to make, but we have to look at the financing, and we have to look and see how many people are willing to hook up immediately so that we can cover our costs. And see how much we need to put out
But
of
does-
pocket until it gets it.
Does the state have any kind of low interest kind of?
What I would like to do at this
That would be-
point
Yes.
is, we want to answer your questions, but until we have this information, we're just going to be spinning our wheels here. So what I would like to do is make sure that Wendy has your contact, and we will make the decisions on how best to proceed, but as you give us input and stay involved, then we will probably be able to reach something that makes us all equally unhappy or happy. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Which that still could be. Yeah, you get through that.
Steve, you look great. You look great.
This was passed out way back.
But I got it.
So we sent out, a
Okay, while Wendy finishes getting the addresses, I think we can probably move on to the next item.
Is your public outreach?
Well, we'll wait for Wendy.
But did you put your,
How have you been?
I just like to go to meetings all day.
You know, you really should be careful because it can get addictive.
That's where it starts. It all started with a school board meeting, and next thing you knew, I was on the hard stuff, going to supervisor meetings, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Well, you see how it works, and it is like watching sausage being made, and it was so horrible, and so much didn't make sense. But then, when you get elected to a board, sometimes it doesn't really, it clarifies why people voted in ways that didn't make sense. And yet, I really struggled just now. You know, I feel like I'm part of the problem now.
It's hard.
Well, really, it is, because I feel there's a responsibility to serve people, and, you know, these people definitely deserve to have this service available to them, but they don't deserve to do it at other people's expense. You know, everybody's rights are in play here, not just the people who need it.
You can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, you can, but that's the tough part about making the decision, is you have to have a little bit of courage, and I don't know that I had it tonight, but I felt like these people deserve to at least move forward, but that's a lot of money.
Well, this whole topic has been going on for way too long. I started almost 4 years ago, and we were talking about it then, and
So we
obviously
push
it's
the
gone on
button.
way longer. And,
You know, Frank, today is the day to push it.
oh, let's just do it.
Yes, but, and
The state's been talking about both sides there forever too. They talk to Janet Akers. Every time I've ever talked to them, they talk about something.
Well, the greatest blessing they got was the Golden Valley, unbeknownst to them, right? Because if that hadn't happened and we hadn't seized that opportunity to punch across the road at that time, we wouldn't have been able to do it, you know? And getting Caltrans to approve all of that, everything, that's a nightmare. But we did it. We're ready. But now that we're there, we can't just stand still. We gotta keep that inertia going, otherwise I think it's just gonna kind of freeze up and we're gonna forget about it again.
Well, the fact that they came here, that was a good call.
right, these people have interests, they deserve service, but it is, you know, it's a blessing and a curse, because we do try and balance, and we know that there are, you know, powerful, wealthy interests involved that are getting a big share.
Because that's what's gonna go off in service other areas.
You know, I think we're gonna go ahead and resume the meeting now. Me too. I am, we have a couple hours more, meeting, we're ready to move too. I hate to interrupt you, ladies, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to reassert the meeting has been called to order. I would like to proceed to our next agenda item.
Okay.
And I cannot do it until the treasurer is available. Sorry, I'm glad you came. We are ready to move on to the next item, though. Thank you. Okay. So the next thing that we have is 7B, which is discussion and possible action on ad hoc committee recommendations for public outreach and possible approval of professional services, awareness, outreach information. We had deferred this. Director Mueller was going to get some additional information for us, so I will let him take it from here.
Well, yes, we, just to give a little bit of backdrop on this, our ad hoc committee was established to provide more transparency to the public. And to that end, we are looking to actually hire a PR firm to be able to come out with leaflets and notices and mailers, anything that's perhaps over and above what what we can do in our office here. We got a bid from Terrain and from Newton Public Affairs. What you see in front of you here is just information I collected from Terrain. Now originally, when I asked Terrain to bid this, I was looking at it as kind of a service level types, a service level basically. So many leaflets per year, so many website adjustments, so many etc. And at the end of the day, I think really to compare both of these bids, Newton had provided us just $1 per hour. So I went back to Terrain and I asked Terrain, well, do you do a dollars per hour on an as-needed basis? And they said, well, we would do that, and what you see in front of you here is their hourly rate. And it's not one number, it's actually staggered rates, one being a principal at $235 an hour, an associate at $160, and then an administrative at $120. I'm not sure of the skill sets for each, but if you looked at in an average between those two, maybe we look at an associate rate and we look at Newton's cost. And Wendy, did you have Newton's?
Yeah, it's in the back.
I think Newton's is 150.
It's on the back.
150.
I think it's on the back.
Now,
Terrain's.
so Newton is the one who provides the PR for our water district, and Terrain is a very well-known source, and I think they do Goleta and maybe Santa Barbara.
The sanitary district. I don't know about Santa Barbara.
Okay.
They may.
They strike me as a pretty big outfit, and Newton is a one-person show. So now, what I've seen of the materials from ID1 has actually been quite good, in my opinion. And so I think tonight, I just wanted to inform the rest of the board here on just to give you some numbers, because that's what I was asked to do. And perhaps maybe even choose one. I don't know, I'm open to discussion or your
I
thoughts.
got a question for you, Frank. You got a principal, an associate, and administrative. Now, are they a CUME all three? Does that mean that it's gonna take a principal and an associate to do a letter for us, and then there's an administrative charge on top of that? Is that what I'm reading?
Well, it's like going to I think it's like going to a legal office. I mean, basically, you might think you're paying the administrative rate, but then, well, no, we need to pull in this consultant and that consultant, and before you know it, it's up to the principal rate. So,
for that matter, for that reason, I like that. It's flat, it's black and white, it's simple, and it's per hour.
And right, exactly, that is what is attractive to me, is that as needed.
Newton does the water district?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I received this stuff from the water district, and I think it is more than adequate. It definitely catches my eye and I open it. I would like to, once again, while we're talking about this, we need to have this service available, and I like on an as-needed basis, but I really want to commend staff, and probably Wendy especially, excellent job with Horizon. The board was a little caught off guard when people were like, well, at our meeting or what, but as I explained to the people who came in here, we're all learning how to do this. It's a whole new world of communication, and you were highly successful there, and I applaud you. So I think Wendy has demonstrated her ability to really contact people in a meaningful way, and then we have this to back you up for the big stuff. If we're doing a push, if we're going to annex something, and we really need to get the word out and publicize stuff. But you did an excellent job with Horizon Drive, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so your recommendation is Newton? Right?
I believe, yeah, and from what I'm hearing here, I think everybody probably feels pretty comfortable with
I'm
Newton.
happy with them.
I make a motion that we go with Newton.
Do I have a second?
I'll make a second on this motion.
Okay. Rick, is there anything before we have Wendy do the roll call?
You're not committing to any level of service from them. How would they be authorized to undertake a particular task at their hourly rate? Would staff have the authority to call them up and say, hey, we need a newsletter, what's it gonna cost, or what would be the
I think
process
it's on an
there?
as-needed basis, directed by the board or directed by, you know.
Well, we could authorize staff to spend up to a certain number, and that might be a reasonable number, might be $5,000. I don't know what the ballpark for notifying a district is, but
It would be an open PO, I'm thinking, and that probably would have some some value. So what the motion might wanna be is Wendy to contact Newton and ask, how do we get started? Is there a purchase order for up to say $5,000 to start, and we go from there? And then you come back and report to the board. Does that sound fair?
and I do have a legal question, because the only place where I would like it to be different, but maybe it couldn't be, and I think Ms. Knowles made the point, for the board to be copied on communication that goes to the public, because I'm not on Horizon Drive, I didn't get a letter or a survey, but as a board member, I like to know when people come up to me and say, oh, I got your survey. I'm like, I thought I've been hearing for 2 years, well, we can't contact anyone unless you give us specific direction. Then all of a sudden, people are getting letters like, whoa, these guys are overachievers now, that's great. But legally, when something is sent out, should the board receive a copy of it?
Well, this is an issue that came up very early on in your tenure here, you might recall, where where I think a letter went to LAFCO and you didn't see a copy of it.
I was not copied, I was CC'd, and I was at a meeting and it said CC'd Karen Jones. I'm like, BS.
So what I indicated at that time, we don't have any policies currently that say what is the process for getting documents in the hands of board members and when, and under what circumstances. And I suggested we might want to have a policy like that. In the absence of a policy, a formal policy, I think you can simply direct staff, whenever you send out a notice to the public, send a copy to the board members within 3 business days, or by email the same day, or call them and let them know. Whatever you want to have happen, you have the authority to direct staff to keep you in the loop on something like that.
Well, I would like, because I don't want to micromanage, and I think that Wendy took the initiative, came up with a good plan to contact people. I would just like send a copy to the board, like when you send to the 28 people in the neighborhood to add these, at the same time.
By mail, by email?
However they're receiving it, however she's
By
dispensing
email.
it, yes.
I mean, they normally communicate with us by email.
Yeah, email's probably easier for you, somewhat.
Is that workable?
I mean, no big deal, and you did a great job, and that's the one area of improvement, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought, are you kidding me? A policy on copying people? But it does come down to this sometimes, doesn't it? Just for clarity, so.
Yeah, and here, I think a direction serves the same purpose. You know, there won't be the same written record of it, except to the extent that it's stated in the minutes, but I think the communication has been made now.
Yes, and I think we're making great gains.
So thank you for bringing that up, because that ties back into the 30, 60, 90-day plan. So when we first formed this ad hoc public outreach committee, we actually came up with definitions and classifications for those types of communications. Number 1 being routine, normal day-to-day operations of the district, upcoming board meeting, agenda items, community relations. And then 2 is community interest, so items which the district's engaged in or plans to be engaged in where it can affect a ratepayer's fees or property, etc. And 3, urgent. And those 3 definitions need to be woven back into our board policy manual. And that's what we're actually going to talk about next. Because when we're talking about these items, we can say, Wendy, that's considered community interest, and she knows exactly what that means. And if that means that we get CC'd copies back to the board, if we establish a meeting, then that's what it means. That's the definition that we're actually trying to come up with here.
Here is my concern.
Okay.
My concern, it's still, you're right, it gets back to this CC thing, and different boards have different styles, and staff adapts to an incoming board, and to direct this board, this session, would like staff to just include us on mailings that they send out. We'd like to have that same information. To make it, something that the next board has to go through an ad hoc committee and vote, and a policy just seems like an awful lot to me.
Well, we're there now, so that henceforth, that should not be an issue.
Well, we are not there. We're talking
this is-
about,
This is an automatic then.
Yeah.
So all of this communication then just happens automatically, right? So if we weave this back into our board policy manual, then we know what those definitions mean. So when we're talking about a subject, we can just say, Wendy, that's routine, and she knows what that means. And that type of transparency is done. We don't have to then later say, why didn't we get copied? No, we said it was routine, and that automatically means that we get a copy. So that was the whole purpose for putting all of this together, right? Because when you and I started the ad hoc, these are the definitions we came up with.
well,
To be
from
transparent.
your point of view, mine was, just what the, legal requirement was and what was better. I said, good, better, best, than going for the best possible, and particularly in situations like if we're gonna annex a group of houses, to let them know. And so you're talking about, rewriting our board policy, or just adding a page to it with these definitions specifically tonight?
It could be as easy as just going back and modifying not throwing the whole policy manual out. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just adding these definitions to that policy manual, because it's not in there today. You won't find it.
No, I know that it's not in there. I'm looking to see what the wording of the routine. I mean, it may be seen as a management style. It may be seen as something that needs to be a dictate, a hard rule for the next board to either follow this or not. So, I don't have a big problem with it. I just want to reread the wording. If we're going to put it in the policy manual, then it makes the words a lot more important.
It certainly does, and that way we don't forget. So otherwise, I think if we don't do this, then we'll be at the mercy of somebody remembering, oh yeah, it would be a good idea to put that in the website. One of you will have to suggest that then. I'm just saying that if we have it in the board manual, it's already done. We say, Wendy, it's routine, and then bam, it's done. So, or if it's community interest, then she knows that she pushes another button, and then that goes out in a letter. It's whatever we decide here.
It's, for me, I think it just goes without saying that if you're gonna annex people, that you notify them. So, but if we need to put it in here, and I'm not saying that people have their memories always correct or their take on things, but we had a resident earlier in the evening tell us, we were told, don't protest, it'll mess things up. Some people like to do things under the cover of darkness. That person may have misunderstood board being, saying things like that to them. But sometimes people want to, act fast and not let things out. Our board was elected on a message of transparency. So the voters have an awful lot of power in what direction the board takes. Do they like a board that keeps them informed, or do they like a board to just get it done? What did C.S. Lewis say, sleep because there's rough men at night that blah, 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 that kind of thing. People now seem to like transparency. I'm a fan of it. If we need to put this in our policy manual, do we need to?
This does need to go into the policy manual.
Okay. And is the wording proper and we can do it right now, or do we need to extend this meeting?
Well, we have gone through this, and this was part of our 30-day plan. That was, 90 days ago. So we came up with the if you go to sheet 2, just flip that one over.
Okay, because we did schedule the meeting.
So these were the recommendations we made. So with each of these topics, routine, the recommendation was website only. And then community interest, and these are some examples of what these community interest topics could include. Our recommendation is either direct mail or email. if we don't take all of this and put it somewhere, then it will die, and the public will not be informed.
No, I think
That's
you
the
have a
danger.
good point. No, that is true, and you've taken it this far, and I commend you, and so I'm hearing you, and that might be the way to go. And if a board finds this tedious or restrictive, or they're like, what's a notify me tool, the way we might say,
Is
what's
this
AOL?
Is this something we need to make a motion or a direction?
If it's going in the policy
I think you
manual.
can make a direction, because I think if the policy comes back, it would be an amendment that would be in the form of a resolution that you would adopt.
Yes.
And I'll just throw out the fact that when the policy manual was originally adopted, I provided a number of comments on it, suggested changes, kind of cleanup and legal refinements. But for whatever reason, my suggested changes didn't make it into the policy that got adopted. So it's something that you could look at, and if we're going to amend the policy manual, you might want to look at my proposed changes that I made.
Can you bring
10
that
years
to us
ago.
next
No,
meeting?
yes,
I can provide that to the district email, and then I could incorporate these provisions in there as well, and then you'd have a policy manual that's updated to that extent. You talked about other changes to the policy manual over time. I don't know if you want to back up and consider some of those other things as well. Now would be the time to do it. If we put that on the side burner for some period of time, we didn't want to update the employee manual because we have the Teamster issue going forward, and then we didn't want to update the board policy manual for other reasons, all of which I can't recall right now. But if we are finally bringing back the board policy manual for an amendment, this is certainly an amendment we can do. We can have you look at the amendments that I proposed some time ago, and we should also consider if there might be other amendments that we might want to make at the same time.
Yes, and when,
There are other amendments that need to be changed in that, so, I would like to see, the whole board policy come back to and make those changes and, possibly make the other changes, but also change the format so we can move into a, more refined policy manual where they're all listed and categorized, so you can just go to the policy manual and find it under administration, there's a board policy, under, operations, there's policies, under, financing, there's policies. So that's where I would like to move, because it would be much cleaner, and, there's been a lot of things that have been done by resolution, and those get forgotten because you have to go find a resolution number. So that would be my choice.
yes, I agree, the world has changed, and I wasn't trying to give you a hard time, but we want to get it right, and this is the proper time to do that. So maybe tonight we can concur that this needs to be incorporated as written. Rick will, if you see something that's a problem, that's too specific, but, and not even being critical by pointing out the notify me, you said including, it's funny how old things can get in a manual, and you'll have stuff about electronic communications that seem archaic. But this does seem like a good opportunity to put this as a policy in our manual, so there is a policy. If somebody says, why wasn't I called? Well, our policy is, so you're correct. I agree, it should go in the policy manual, and this seems like a time to get our policy manual updated.
So should I be making a motion then to direct you to come back next meeting with those changes, or?
Basically, that could be a motion or a direction, and Wendy and I can work together.
Yeah. And we do have a motion on the floor that hasn't been seconded or anything for, to hire Newton on an as-needed basis.
Okay.
So-
Oh, I didn't think that was actually a motion, because that's not costing any money, right? We were,
Well, he made it as a motion.
I made it as a motion
Yeah.
to hire them.
Yeah.
So yes, we are spending money.
Yeah, so to hire Newton on an as-needed basis, but
okay.
it started with, well, how do we contact Newton? Are you authorizing
Okay.
staff to do it? And then it went off on.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
and-
Authorizing
Oh,
staff.
sorry.
Yes, and if we need to put a spending limit on it in the motion, we will, but basically, we don't need to micromanage it, and I have confidence that, in certain cases, we'll say, okay, this is a big campaign, and but generally, like what you did with Verizon was great. if you need to call Newton in, you don't need to get special board authorization. That's where I want this motion to go. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Okay, so,
I mean, should we put a spending limit on it?
Well, they didn't ask for a retainer. That was kind of the nice part of Newton, right? Because they were truly on an as-needed basis. They didn't need any money up front. So if we're hiring them, that's for a $0 value. And I guess I just sort of was thinking that was like, I mean, I don't know if that's a $0 PO or maybe it's a PO, it's an open PO up to $5,000. I'm not really sure. I guess that's why I started asking the question. Well,
Yeah.
how do you hire somebody for no money? I mean,
Right.
but
There are other professional services like letter of engagement. Maybe the office something similar to that.
you know, maybe, and that's why I was
just
thinking,
bring
well,
those
maybe we
terms.
would just direct staff then to ask her, well, what does it take to get you engaged?
well,
And what is your preference?
for instance, if there's something of community interest that we don't anticipate, but it happens and it's between board meetings, Wendy should be able to send out a flyer that your service will be down on the 28th from this time to that time
Absolutely.
without calling a special meeting. It's not an emergency, but it's certainly going to affect everyone.
Up to a dollar.
We hire Newton and give them a spending limit of, I don't know, $4,000 before they have to come back to the board for.
Well, I would put our staff in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
not Newton.
No, I mean,
Yes,
the
like-
staff,
yes,
not Newton. Yeah.
And I don't know what a reasonable amount to send out, 1,200, 1,500, you know.
To do the letters that we just, sent out, it costs $1,000, but that doesn't include staff's time.
Okay, then, and we generally don't factor staff time into this, how much we're gonna spend on the Horizon proposal. So I think maybe is $10,000 a reasonable limit to authorize Wendy if she needs to contact everyone in the district and use their services?
Well, I mean, so it was $1,000 to contact those.
It was $1,000 to, print them out, have them folded, and labels and postage.
And that went to,
That's
That
actually
went to
Everybody.
182 people within.
that
the
went to our
district.
entire district.
Yes.
So $3,000 is enough money for you to have to contact to do something like that again.
I would think so. I mean, it would cost $1,000 for us to put postage and stuff, because you don't wanna pay her $150 an hour to
Right,
do that.
right.
So you're looking at, $2,000 for her to do something.
Okay,
And that's-
or would you,
However,
That's
though,
like
or
10.
5,000,
if I may though, it's the timeliness.
right,
Because it took us 3 weeks to do it, because we had to bring the operators in to stuff envelopes and
Right.
stuff,
Well,
so.
and it
But
happens.
it's timely.
Yeah.
right, all right, so $5,000. Let's, a $5,000 limit,
That's probably reasonable.
yeah,
Per occurrence, or per event, or per issue, not annual or monthly or?
Well, I was gonna comment.
Right,
that
that's
going into
the
next budget year,
policy.
we'll set up a budget line item
for
for it.
that,
I think,
Okay, there you
building off
go.
what Rick's saying.
yeah.
Yes, have so much in the budget and staff can decide how they spend that through the year. So what do you need from us right now? There's a motion?
We have a motion and a second, and the motion was to hire Newton on an as-needed basis. So do we want to change that?
Is that enough for us, for,
With up to a $5,000 spending limit without having to come back to the board and ask for money
this year?
this year.
And then it can be budgeted. So we have a motion,
Fiscal year.
excuse me, fiscal year, yes.
So to hire Newton on an as-needed basis up to a $5,000 spending limit?
Yeah, for fiscal year, is this considered fiscal year 2019? Okay.
And you're good with that, Bob?
Excuse me?
Are you good with that? 'Cause you have
Yeah,
the
the
second.
5 is fine.
Okay,
The 5 is fine.
all right. So we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay.
Director Beard,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Muller,
Aye.
Director DeAmbro.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Now you're on the motion of directing
So, yeah.
policy.
Yes.
Okay, now you say that, to do a motion directing the policy? Did I misunderstand? I thought you just said something about we need a motion.
To direct staff to,
Yeah, you were already on that one, we had to go back. to
Okay,
this.
okay.
Budget.
So, well, I want to make sure that we stay on the agendized item, which is a public outreach,
Right.
but it is also related to the updating of the whole manual. So we're not gonna, I'm gonna need some more help from Rick.
So, the action would be to direct staff either in the form of a motion or by consensus to bring back a revised board policy manual that incorporates the recommendations of the ad hoc public outreach committee for the 3 classifications, includes the changes that I had previously recommended, but that didn't find their way into the current policy manual, and to also address the issues that Wendy would like to address in a revised manual. And we bring it back to the board for consideration and action.
I think the board concurs with that.
So moved.
Yes, I mean, I don't think we need a motion.
Well stated.
Yes.
So that's board consensus, or is that?
Consensus.
Okay, board consensus, okay.
Do we really still have item C? I feel like I've been in Solvang forever today.
Well, you do, and and with Wendy, we crafted this as broad as possible so we could discuss the different things. Director Jones, I mean, really, probably a good time just to springboard off of the 3 o'clock meeting. And that was the intent to see, but I mean, there's the financing option, so you have stuff to report there, maybe definitely some of the other stuff to report, but it was put on there so we had to continue the discussion, because it kind of happened, just to restate things real quickly, is that between our regular meeting and then the special meeting we had that was originally set up just for the item we just took care of, the public outreach, Solvang asked us to submit a proposal. So this is kind of the interim step there that, as we've seen, they've had another change in management. We've crafted some of our questions and have sent them to Solvang and haven't heard back yet. But then today we've had our meeting, and with that I'll let President Jones talk about all the good outcomes of that one.
And this will also, incorporate the committee report, and Bob will weigh in. But Director D'Ambra and I went to the wastewater committee meeting today at the plant in Solvang, and it was successful on many levels. Staff was there, Solvang staff. We had also staff, Kevin, who works at the Shumash plant. So it was informative on many levels before we even got to the meeting. Just seeing the plant, having an opportunity to interface with our colleagues in Solvang was a very positive thing. When we moved in and had the meeting, and staff was also present, all staff, not just the administrative staff, we were able to freewheel a bit. They had their new, I don't know if her title is interim city manager, Zena, acting. But anyway, really sharp gal, and had great answers of different possibilities of ways that we could work together in financing, and she just really seemed to know her stuff. I left the meeting feeling like we had a lot of input, and that everyone at the meeting, I would say for the most part, everyone was excited. We had tough questions back and forth of each other at certain points in the discussion. Well, will we do this first, or do we have to spend money on that? But overall, just the fact that we were having a dialogue and people were being reasonable, I really felt like we moved the ball down the field in a good way. So I would defer to Director D'Ambra to see what his impressions were.
I wouldn't be surprised if you went there now and they were putting cinder blocks up. The progress, it was just a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy, a lot of interface between people, eliminating a lot of doubts or questions. It's probably one of the best meetings, if not the best I've ever been to on this board. Everybody's energy was aligned, if you will. Everybody had felt good coming out of there.
I like your cinder block comment, because one thing that I would like to say was accomplished. Paul is here, Jeff is here. Just talking about aeration and things that can happen now that make the plant more efficient, that are things that staff in Solvang wants guidance, wants to be able to move forward with. Something was accomplished without a long series of meetings and consultants, which we saw earlier this evening. Sometimes you can really get bogged down, and necessary, certainly. And that's why I'm saying some of the back and forth, when I'm like, with the engineering stuff, and Bob rightly pointed out, as did the sole engineer there, like, hey, if this is gonna happen, it's got, we need a tight plan. But at the same time, even though we had this back and forth and dialogue, we actually were able to accomplish some things. And I am excited to see what kind of progress occurs in the next couple of months, because I feel very optimistic.
Yeah, and if I may, then back to the big highlights that came out of there, one of our topics was, can you include us, or will you include us in the financing for the upgrade? And they indicated that yes, they were. They would, because that was a big one. Our 20% pretty much equals what you see on our balance sheet as in reserves. So that's a positive step. I was worried first that might have been going a different direction, but right now they're including that in. As a side note, I have reached out to a myriad of other people too, though, to make sure that A, we're getting the best deal, and B, that in case we were going along, rather than waiting for a no to come back. So by the October meeting, I should have some preliminary, some other discussion points or someplace to look on that. And then yes, back to what the two directors are talking about, definitely left with exactly the opposite of what you saw this evening with, yes, staffs get go work together, come back with some plans for some of the stuff that I know the Solvang staff's already been working on. And basically, I feel that they're going to be able to take that directly to their council then. And, which feels good as I come to this meeting, we have to get mired down the bureaucracy the other way. It feels like we cut through a whole bunch of it today. And yeah, back to hopefully 2 months or so, we have something to them and see where they go with it. So very, very positive meeting.
Yeah, it was great. But I feel that's probably about all we need to cover on that. Other than I think that I have a lot of confidence in the people that I was at that meeting with. So we'll see.
The only thing we had an issue on was, I guess, scheduling.
I think, and once again, you heard that I'm thinking November, if not October, but definitely November. But back to having the actual dollar amount. Here's what we need to spend. The other was get it done by March, not wait till January to start.
Okay, well, as much as I enjoyed that meeting and have enjoyed this meeting so far, I'm going to move to the next topic, which is informational items, and I'm very disappointed we don't have any. So we're going to jump to number 9, reports, and Jeff, manager.
You kind of just hit mine. I didn't get the flows put in there, but we'll put them in there again next month and talk about that.
Paul showed me them earlier today.
And maybe now we'll just get them directly from there. We don't have to print them do that. But yeah, so recap of that. That's been a lot of it. You heard some of the others, making some of the other phone calls to financing, engineers, you name it, to get ready and up to speed on these. And the only other one that we had, we did get the Shumash back online. Don't know if it was age, don't know if it was, anyway, one of the motors just finally locked up, and as it locked up, it just went up the line. It blew up that, and blew up one of those, and yeah, and back to, the fun part of it is, it was something from Canada to begin with, and then a few modifications there, now a few other modifications, and so there's like 5 different countries talking to one another there. But anyway, it's back up online, and actually suggest going to some smaller horsepower motors, because the motors that are currently powering it came with the SBR, and his tags into the conversation we're having at Solvang today, but be able to hopefully go from like a 50 to 30 horsepower motor, so air with defined bubbles, just less demand. So that's been about it. Next week off to the Special District Association annual meeting, and we'll report back from that, and then keep you apprised of some of these other crazy laws that keep coming and going. So that's all I have.
Okay. Now we have a report from the legal counsel, Mr. Battles.
I thought I'd report on a recent Supreme Court case involving a sewer backup. And it's frankly a little puzzling to me that a case like this would make it all the way to the California Supreme Court.
Well, it's sexy.
I guess that's it. So in this case, it was a dental practice that suffered damage when raw sewage, according to the court, began spewing from toilets, sinks, and drains. And that caused the dentists to file an inverse condemnation action against the city that operated the sewer system, basically a taking, because a public project caused damage to their property. So the facts were that there was a blockage in the city's sewer main. The blockage was most likely caused by roots. The blockage resulted in a backup into the dental offices, and the backup caused damage to the property. So those facts were not really in dispute, but the issue was whose responsibility is it for the damage? And what the court held was that public entities, in this case the city, not strictly liable or otherwise automatically liable for any conceivable damage bearing some kind of connection, however remote, to a public improvement. The plaintiff must ordinarily show that the damage to private property was substantially caused by inherent risks associated with the design, construction, or maintenance of the public improvement, the sewer system. The court said that's certainly not something the dentists were able to show in this case, where the installation of a backwater valve, backflow preventer, on their premises not only would have prevented or drastically mitigated the risk, but was also legally required. So if there was a legal requirement to have a backflow preventer, and given the fact that the property was lower than the sewer main or lower than the upstream manhole, and they hadn't installed the backflow device, and so they couldn't hold the city liable when there was a backup from the city sewer system, even though it was the city's fault that there was the backup with it being in the public sewer and there being roots.
So
the city
what
wasn't liable.
you're saying that you can't fight City Hall?
Well, the dentist didn't successfully fight City Hall in this case.
And, they kind of blew it by not taking their own precautions.
Right.
Yes, so.
Yeah.
I would have not liked to have seen that dentist after he got that nose being
I don't know.
shared.
I don't know what impact it had on the
I wouldn't have wanted to make a federal case out of the fact I had sewage in my dental practice, but everybody's different.
Maybe that'll be the next appeal.
It's not very appealing. Okay, the Secretary Treasurer's report.
All right, all the letters went out, at the, I think it's like the 3rd of September. We finished the audit, went through with flying colors, and they'll be back to report in January. That's all I have.
That's nice. That also ties in with our meeting.
Great.
So finally, committee reports. We covered the ad hoc committee. Good job, Frank. We covered the wastewater treatment. And I have failed to complete the ad hoc on the manager's evaluation. Bob and I are going to schedule and meet with Jeff, and then we will do the manager's evaluation full board. But Bob has been available, and I have not this week. But we'll get that done. So that's all I have to report on that. So, tentative agenda items. That would be a tentative agenda item, and I'm not prepared yet. And then we also on the agenda will have more information on Horizon Drive will be on the agenda, and financing stuff with Solvang. Anything else anyone can think of? So does this mean that
For tentative agenda items, I think one thing that we need to look into is alternatives. We've discussed this before. I know Bob and I ran on this, that we want to look at alternatives for our sewage. We've talked about this before. I know some people aren't in favor of it, but I think to do our constituents or our people that we serve justice and to make sure we're giving them the best deal, we need to look elsewhere also. So I think that needs to be on the agenda next month.
anyone else?
I concurred. I told you I felt that we need to look at everything.
Doesn't mean
We
it's
would
gonna
be failing in our endeavor not to put everything on the table, that's required of us.
I would say right now, if you have a specific agenda item, you can say it, but we have to have things agendized before we get into discussion at
Right.
this point.
Yeah.
So is there something specifically you want to put on the agenda, or?
We would like to look at the casino, working with them, working with Buellton.
Yeah, working with
Those,
Los Olivos, speaking with Los Olivos.
well, Los Olivos, they want to do their own thing,
Yeah.
and I bless them for that.
Well, no, we need to include everything. Everything's gotta be on the table. We've gotta invest
Okay,
in
well then we'll put Los Olivos on there also.
Yeah.
But they were not interested in doing it, there was no receptive action, they want to do their own little entity, and I honored that. But I think,
I think what's happening right now, I don't even know if I should proceed with, because things aren't agendized, but I've been approached by 2 different board members on a topic, and I'm not comfortable right now talking about it without conferring with Mr. Battles. So let's just generally say we will explore other options in
Yeah.
future agendas, and then we can adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Mhm.
Okay, so this meeting of the Santa Ynez Community Service District is adjourned at 7:41. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, me too.
okay, good meeting,
It
good
was.
day.